I'm 81 years old. For most of my life, I treated God like a customer service line. I'd call up, list my complaints and requests, and hope for a resolution. I thought that was faith. This year, I stopped calling. I just sat down with Him instead, and it changed everything. Let me tell you what happened. It started with my mother. I was born in 1943, with my father off at war. Her prayers were a constant whisper, for his safety, for our food, for everything. I learned that prayer was a list you handed to a powerful, distant figure. That framework stuck. As a kid, I asked for good grades, for my sick puppy. As a teen, I prayed for a boy to like me, for college. I pictured God with a ledger, weighing if I deserved what I wanted. I loved Him, but it was a nervous love. I always worried I wasn't praying right to get the answers. That carried right into my marriage. I met Robert at 22. He was steady. We built a good life. Then my prayers became a torrent for our kids, their safety, their futures. When Robert had a heart scare at 55, I made a deal. I begged God, please let me keep him. I'll do anything. He did, and I was grateful. But the transaction just got deeper. My prayer list was longer than my grocery list. I was the family worrier, and I brought all that worry to God every day. I was so busy talking, I never stopped to listen. The silence after my words felt like a test I was failing. Then the ground shifted. Robert passed away 5 years ago, in his sleep. The grief was a hollow, silent room, and my prayers, they just stopped. The words were gone. The old phrases like, "Give me strength," felt like empty noise. I'd sit in our church pew and feel only the absence of his shoulder beside mine. I felt abandoned, not by Robert, but by the language of faith I'd used my whole life. I thought it had failed me. That silence, though, became a strange gift. Last spring, I was in my garden, just planting tomatoes. I wasn't praying, I was just being, feeling the sun, the dirt, watching a ladybug. And a thought came, clear and quiet. I am here. It wasn't an answer. I hadn't asked anything. It was just a statement of presence. I started to cry. It was like finally turning to see someone who'd been sitting beside me for 80 years, waiting for me to run out of things to say. I started seeking that on purpose. In the morning with my coffee, I'd just look out. I'd say, "Good morning, God," and then hush. I'd feel the ache in my knees, not as a problem to report, but just as part of the moment we were sharing. The anxiety began to melt. It was replaced by a companionship so steady it took my breath away. He wasn't a distant voice. He was in the chair Robert used to occupy. It was tested fast. My grandson Leo was in a car accident. The call came at night. The old reflex screamed, "Start begging, bargain." In the hospital waiting room, my family was praying frantically. I closed my eyes. The panic was a wave. But beneath it, I reached for that presence. I didn't ask for Leo to be spared. I just whispered, "We are here. He is here with us." I held the space. It felt like anchoring in a hurricane. The outcome was unknown, but I wasn't alone in the waiting. For the first time, my faith felt like solid ground, not a life raft I was frantically blowing up. Leo pulled through, and I understood. My silent companionship hadn't changed the accident. It changed me in the middle of it. I could be fully present for my scared daughter. I could sit with Leo and laugh at his jokes, not haunted by a backlog of requests. My faith was no longer a tool to control things. It was the solace of walking through life, whatever it held, with a friend. The why didn't matter so much. The who I was with became everything. It reshaped all my relationships. I started just listening to my daughter's work stress, to my old friend Martha's stories. I was practicing what I learned with God, just being with. The need to fix everything fell away. Even my memories of Robert softened. The sharp pain turned into a warm companionship. Love isn't about directing the show. It's about sharing the stage. I found my old prayer journals recently. Page after page of lists. Pray for this, pray for that. I saw my own anxious handwriting. Notes that said, still waiting. I didn't feel mad at that younger me. I felt tender. She was trying so hard, working her faith like a job. She never knew she could just clock out and take a walk with the boss. I thanked her. She kept us talking long enough for me to finally learn how to be quiet. So here I am. I'm 81. The world is troubled. My body aches. But I'm not afraid. I don't ask for a peaceful passing. I sit in the garden with him. We watch the finches fight. We watch the news. Sometimes I cry, and the comfort isn't in the tears stopping, but in them being witnessed. This is the secret. Faith as friendship. It's not about getting what you want. It's about wanting what you have, because you're never having it alone. The greatest prayer I know is a deep breath and the quiet thought, here we are. And he is. He always has been. He always has been. And you know what? That realization didn't just stay in my garden or my kitchen. It started to leak out into everything. Like the very next Sunday at church. I was sitting there, and Pastor Mike was up front talking about prayer as a weapon, about storming the gates of heaven with our petitions. And for the first time, I felt uncomfortable. Not angry, just like he was speaking a language I used to know but had forgotten. Everyone around me had their heads bowed, their lips moving. I just sat there. I felt that quiet presence beside me. I thought, we're just here. That's enough. It was a strange feeling, like I was holding a secret. After the service, my friend Eleanor came up to me. She looked worried. Margaret, she said, using my full name, which she only does when she's serious. Are you feeling all right? You seemed so far away during the prayer time. I just smiled. I didn't know how to explain it. I'm fine, Eleanor, I said. Better than fine, actually. I was just listening. She patted my arm, her face all sympathy. I know, dear. After Robert, it's hard to find the words. We're all praying for your comfort. I nodded and thanked her, but inside I was thinking, that's just it. I'm not looking for comfort from out there anymore. It's right here. That week, my daughter Sarah came over. She was stressed about Leo, about bills, about everything. She sat at my kitchen table, and the words just tumbled out of her. The old me would have jumped in. I'd have said, let's pray about it right now, and launched into a list for God. I'd have tried to fix it. This time, I just poured her some tea. I listened. I really listened. When she finally slowed down, she looked at me, her eyes tired. "Aren't you going to tell me it'll be okay?" she asked. I reached over and took her hand. "I don't know if it'll be okay," I said. It was hard to say that, but I know you're not alone in it, and I'm right here with you. She started to cry then, a quiet, relieved kind of cry. Not because I'd solved anything, but because for once, someone wasn't trying to. That was a turning point. Seeing that my quiet could be a gift to someone else, it gave me a little courage. But then the real test came. It wasn't a crisis this time. It was a slow, creeping thing. The doctor called with my test results. Nothing catastrophic, but the word progression was used about my arthritis. The word management. The word aging. It was a Friday afternoon. I hung up the phone and felt that old, familiar panic start to rise. It was a voice in my head that said, "Okay, time to pray. Pray for it to stop, for healing, for more time." I could feel the old transaction trying to start up again. My heart was beating fast. I went and sat in Robert's chair. I closed my eyes. I didn't say a word. I just felt the fear. It was a cold, heavy feeling in my stomach. I let myself feel it, and I imagined just placing it on the table between me and God. Not handing it to Him to fix, just putting it there so we could both look at it. A strange thing happened. The fear didn't vanish, but it stopped being a scream and became just a fact. A fact I wasn't facing alone. I whispered, "Well, this is new." And in the quiet, I didn't hear an answer. I just felt a solidarity, like a friend sitting with you in a waiting room, not promising good news, just promising not to leave. That was worth more than any miracle I could have begged for. That was worth more than any miracle I could have begged for. But you see, that kind of peace, it makes you brave, or maybe reckless. I decided to tell Eleanor. I thought maybe she'd understand. We were having tea on her porch the next Tuesday. The sun was nice. I took a breath and said, "Eleanor, I've stopped asking God for things." She put her cup down. "What do you mean?" I tried to explain. I said, "I just sit with Him now. I don't make lists. I just be." She stared at me. Her face changed. It wasn't sympathy anymore. It was confusion, and then something like alarm. "Margaret," she said, her voice tight, "that sounds like giving up. Prayer is our duty. It's how we show we need Him." I said, "But I do need Him. I just don't think He needs my lists." She shook her head. "That's a dangerous slope. That's how people fall away. You just sit there, in silence? That's not faith. That's emptiness." Her words hit me like a slap. I felt hot and cold. This was my oldest friend. She made my new peace sound like a sin. "It's not emptiness," I said, but my voice was small. "It's full. It's the fullest I've ever been." She reached over and patted my hand, but it felt condescending. "Dear, you're grieving. We all miss Robert. But you can't stop talking to God because you're sad. That's when you need to talk the most." She wasn't listening. She was fixing. And she was using the old language, the one I didn't speak anymore. I left soon after. I felt sick. Doubt crept in. Was she right? Had I just given up? Was my quiet companionship just a fancy name for spiritual laziness? The old anxiety that I wasn't doing it right came roaring back. But this time it was worse, because now I thought I might have broken the only real relationship I had left. I went home and I tried to pray the old way. I knelt by my bed. I folded my hands. Dear God, I started. I tried to think of a list. My arthritis, Sarah's stress, world peace. The words felt like stones in my mouth. They felt fake. I was performing. I started crying. I wasn't crying from devotion. I was crying from frustration. I felt utterly alone. I had lost the old way, and now my friend told me the new way was wrong. I was in between, with nothing. I got up and went to the attic. I found that old prayer journal again. I opened it to a random page. It was from when Sarah was a teenager. Pray for Sarah to make better friends. Pray for her to be safe at that party. Pray for her heart. I remembered that night. I'd been a wreck. I'd prayed those words over and over, and Sarah had come home fine, laughing, with a new friend. I'd credited my prayers. I'd written, "Thank you," in the margin. Looking at it now, I felt a crushing sadness, not for Sarah, but for me. For that woman who spent the whole night in anxiety, who missed the peace of her own living room, who was so busy reporting on life she forgot to live it. She thought she was building a connection with God, but all she was building was a case file. That's when I broke. I sat on the dusty attic floor and I sobbed. I cried for all the years I'd spent talking into what I thought was a void. I cried for the comfort I'd missed because I was too busy asking for it. I cried for Robert. I'd been so busy asking God to keep him healthy, to make him happy, that I forgot to just be happy with him. I treated my marriage the same way I treated my faith, like a problem to be managed. The cost of what I'd lost came crashing down. It wasn't just Robert. It was the quiet moments I'd missed, the sunsets I'd ignored because I was inside praying for a better tomorrow, the laughter I'd cut short because it was time for evening prayers. I had traded presence for petition, and I was the one who'd done it. God hadn't been distant. I had been. I'd been talking so loudly I couldn't hear him sitting right there. I cried until I was empty. And in that emptiness, there was no voice, no magical feeling, just the dust motes in the attic light and my own ragged breath, and a single clear thought. It's true. You were here the whole time, and I wasn't. That was the hardest moment. Not Eleanor's judgment, not the doctor's news. This. Admitting that my own busyness, my own transactional faith had been the wall. I had built it myself, with every anxious prayer. I sat there for a long time. The tears dried. The shame began to soften. Because you know what? He was there too, in the dusty, quiet attic, not fixing my regret, just sharing it. I hadn't broken our relationship by being quiet. I had finally stopped breaking it with all my noise. I closed the journal. I didn't put it back. I carried it downstairs. I didn't know what I would do with it, but I knew I wouldn't hide from it anymore. I carried that journal downstairs, and I didn't put it back in the dark. I set it on the kitchen table, right next to the fruit bowl. A reminder, not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd finally found. Here's what I learned, sitting there with my past and my present at the same table. I was wrong about what love is. I thought loving Robert, loving my kids, even loving God meant being responsible for their happiness. It meant worrying, fixing, managing, and then reporting my management efforts up the chain of command. That wasn't love. That was administration, and it was exhausting. Love doesn't sit across from you with a clipboard. It sits beside you. It doesn't need a report. It just wants your company. When Robert had his heart scare, I should have spent less time in frantic bargaining and more time just holding his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, memorizing the way his eyes crinkled. I was so busy asking God for more years that I almost missed the minutes I had. That was my mistake. I confused control with care. And that's the advice I'd give to anyone, but especially to those of you like me who've spent a lifetime keeping lists. Put the list down. I'm serious. Just for one day. Don't ask for a single thing. Not for your arthritis to ease, not for your grandchildren to call, not for the world to be less cruel. Just sit. Have your coffee. Look out the window. Say good morning, or don't say anything at all. Feel whatever is there, the ache, the loneliness, the quiet joy of a sunbeam on the floor. And then imagine you're not feeling it alone. That's it. That's the practice. Don't perform, just be there. You'll find that the things you were begging for, peace, comfort, strength, they aren't things God gives you in response to a good request. They are what happened to you when you finally show up for the friendship He's been offering since the day you were born. You don't have to earn a presence that's already there. You just have to stop talking long enough to notice you're in it. And there is so much hope in that, because it means it's never too late. I'm 81. My story is mostly written, but the quality of the remaining pages, that changed completely. I'm not waiting for a better ending anymore. I'm living the middle of a story I'm not writing alone. The fear of the last chapter is gone because I know the author isn't going to leave me to read it by myself. You still have time. Maybe not decades, maybe just this afternoon. But now is enough. This breath is enough. This moment, shared, is the whole point. So that's my story. From a transaction to a friendship. From a ledger to a garden bench. If this quiet truth resonates with you, if you're tired of the spiritual hustle, then maybe you could do me a kindness. If you found a moment of peace in my words, hit that like button. It's a small thing, but it tells me this conversation mattered. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like this. Not preachy, just real talk from the other side of 80. Turn on notifications so you don't miss them. But more than that, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment below. Tell me, when was a moment you felt that quiet presence without asking for anything? Or when did you first get tired of your own prayer list? Let's talk about it. This isn't just my wisdom, it's ours. And if you know someone, a parent, a friend, a spouse, who is weary from a lifetime of spiritual striving, please share this with them. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is give someone permission to stop talking. Finally, I've been asked if I've written this down anywhere else. I haven't published a book, but I do keep a simple blog, a sort of digital garden journal. I've put a link in the description where you can find those quieter, shorter thoughts. And there's also a form there if you have a story of your own you'd like to share with me privately. No lists required, just presence. Thank you for sitting with me here today. Remember, the greatest prayer might just be a deep breath and the quiet realization, here we are, and you are not, and never have been, alone.